think is a adaptation of a story by Hello and welcome to Pink Paradox Reads. I'm Lisa, also known as Pink Paradox, and this is the second part in my massive horror movie haul. I got 13 Blu-rays to show you. Let's get started. First up, we have a movie that I've been wanting to watch for a very long time, and I'll probably be saying that a lot during this video because I haven't seen many of these movies before. This is Burnt Offerings, and it's based on one of my favorite horror novels of all time by Robert Marasco. And this is a story about a family who runs away from the oppressive city summer heat to a dilapidated mansion upstate, which they get to rent for a ridiculously low price. And there might be a reason for that because there are some deviant supernatural forces in the walls, and they make their way into the family one by one. Like I said, this is one of my favorite horror novels of all time, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it adapts into a movie. Next up, we have a newer movie. I'm really loving the giallo-like cover of this one. This is Piercing, and it is based on a book by Ryo Murakami, who also wrote Audition, which I featured in my first horror movie haul video. This is about this guy right here who goes off on a business trip. He checks into a hotel and he calls up an escort agency to book a prostitute, this girl. And he has some very, very nefarious plans for the prostitute. He doesn't want to have sex with her, he wants to murder her. But it turns out that she may have some plans of her own. Is there some sort of theme in Ryo Murakami's books, like these really dangerous women? Here we have a pretty well-known thriller starring Clint Eastwood. In Play Misty For Me, he plays a jazzy DJ who has an affair with one of his fans, and she turns out to be a horrible, horrible stalker. I don't know very much else about this movie, but it's one of those that I've been wanting to watch for a long time. Another thriller, this is The Gift, and I keep mixing this one up with The Box, which I think is a movie based on a story by Richard Matheson. But in this one, Jason Bateman plays a guy who seemingly has a perfect life, and a friend of his from way, way back comes back into his life, and he is carrying with him a bunch of secrets that are threatening to completely crush that perfect life of his. I don't have very high expectations for this one. I picked it up on a whim, but it looks like it's pretty entertaining thriller. Here we have an absolute horror movie classic. This is the Omen Trilogy, and I've only ever watched the first Omen, but I love that movie and I like to watch it during Halloween season. I've heard about the other two, that they're not quite as good as the first one, but the third one has Sam Neill as Damien all grown up, and I'm very interested to see what that's like. Here we have a movie that can only be categorized as dumb fun. This is, of course, Anaconda, starring J-Lo, Ice Cube, and Jon Voight in a completely bonkers role as a guy on the hunt for the titular giant anaconda, which screams at one point. This movie is crazy, but I love it, and I will watch it again and again. Another movie that looks pretty crazy is In Fabric, directed by Peter Strickland. It's probably crazy in a different way than Anaconda, though. This story revolves around a beautiful cursed dress and the woman who buys this dress in a department store, and the horrible, horrible things that start to happen to her. I am very much looking forward to seeing what that is. Possibly more dumb fun. This is Queen of the Damned. It's one of Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles and a sort of follow-up to Interview with the Vampire. This stars Aaliyah as the Queen of the Damned, the ancient vampire that is brought back by the music of Vampire Lestat, played by Tom Cruise in Interview with the Vampire, and Stuart Townsend in this one. Again, don't have much in the way of expectations, but I've wanted to see it, so I got it. Now, this isn't really a horror movie, but it's definitely horror adjacent. Lords of Chaos is based on a true story about a very dark time in Norwegian history, our own satanic panic, if you will. At the beginning of the 90s, there were a bunch of church burnings and murders, and it was all connected to the black metal community. And the guy who founded true black metal, Øystein Aarseth, who was killed by his fellow musician Varg Vikernes. This is a very, very tough movie to sit through. I was debating myself whether I actually wanted to get this because it's a rough movie. Even for a horror movie fan, this is a pretty rough movie. But I decided I wanted to watch it again. Fun fact, contemporary horror author Jason Arnott has a cameo in this movie. In the early 90s, he was working for legendary heavy metal magazine Kerrang magazine, and he put Norwegian black metal on the cover, so he has a little cameo in this movie as himself. Some of this story actually takes place in Bergen, where I live. To my knowledge, none of the scenes were actually filmed in Bergen, but there are some location shots, and for some reason, they're all drenched in perfect sunlight, which is crazy because everybody knows it always rains in Bergen. And that was my little segue into my next two movies, which are actually Norwegian horror movies. And this is a cult classic, Død Snø, or Død Snø, as the Norwegian title says here. And this is a Nazi zombie comedy horror type movie about a bunch of kids who go on Easter break to a cabin in the mountains, and they stumble over these horrible, horrible Nazi zombies, and there's lots of gore and so much blood, and it's so much fun. A bit more serious, I think, is this one. This is Thelma, and this has been compared to Carrie. This is about the titular Thelma, who grows up in a very strict Christian family, and she goes off to university in a bigger city, and whilst there she discovers these mysterious supernatural powers within herself. This looks like a really good movie. I've been listening to the soundtrack a lot. It's a beautiful soundtrack, and I think this is a beautiful movie. Here we have Doctor Sleep, and this is of course the follow-up to The Shining, and I completely missed this one when it was out in theaters. I actually have the book Doctor Sleep and I haven't read it yet, so I'm wondering, should I read the book first and then watch the movie, or is it okay to watch the movie first? This has both the theatrical release and the director's cut, and I've heard that the director's cut is even better. Lastly, we have another movie that I missed out on in theaters. What have I been doing for the past couple of years? This is The Lighthouse, starring Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe as two lighthouse keepers who get stationed on a mysterious island. And this takes place in the 1890s. And I've been avoiding as many discussions around this movie and possible spoilers as I possibly can, even though I don't think this is necessarily the type of movie that you can spoil. But yeah, I really have no idea what happens in this movie. It's New England in the 1890s, so maybe there's something Lovecraftian going on. So there you have all the movies in my massive horror movie haul. Have you seen any of these movies? Did you enjoy them? Did you hate them? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have any horror movie recommendations you want to send my way, put that in the comments as well.